If you had to pick reasons that why all these people commit all these school shootings in your school, what would the biggest reason be? Bullying. We've been focusing in on the Wisconsin shooting for the past week. And let me tell you, there's now new developments in this case. This person right here who shot up the school, it led to bullying. So let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at the story.
Tonight, police in Madison, Wisconsin are urgently searching for what led a 15-year-old girl to bring a 9mm handgun to school and open fire. Investigators say Natalie Ruffnow, who went by Samantha, arrived at the Abundant Life Christian School Monday morning, killed a teacher and fellow student, and wounded 6 others before taking her own life.
The past 24 hours have been a flurry of emotion, sadness, anger, disappointment, grief.
Grief as they try to understand why a festive day with students dressed in their holiday pajamas ended with them evacuating a shooting scene. Police Chief Sean Barnes says the motive was a combination of factors, and they are looking into everything from possible bullying to her online activity, adding everyone at the school was targeted equally in the shooting. As for writings related to the shooting that have been circulating online,
At this time, we cannot verify the document. We ask that you not share the document or spread any information that may be false.
but police are looking for original documents that may have been taken from the shooter's home and speaking to her parents, who they say are cooperative, to determine whether they owned or possessed the gun their daughter allegedly used.
I think law enforcement will take the steps necessary, but we don't know nearly enough yet.
Not enough to know whether the parents will face criminal charges. While the police chief says they will look into whether the parents were negligent, he says that does not appear to be the case right now. 2 of the shooting victims remain in critical condition with life-threatening injuries, and police are asking members of the community to respect the privacy of the student and teacher who were killed.
That particular teacher, she would have done anything for those kids. She would have been right there. Loved the school, loved her kids, loved teaching.
Beautiful lights.
Yeah.
That they were beautiful souls.
It was at least the 83rd school shooting in the U.S. this year, more than any other year since CNN started tracking school shootings in 2008.
There's going to be public debate about the motives and other aspects of this mass shooting. But let us remember this fact. Gun violence is the #1 killer of children in this country. That's a legacy we cannot accept.
And it just might be something no one could accept because it's always been going on. And you know, bullying just goes on. And that's all the reasons why these school shootings happen, is because people are being bullied. And not just that, you know, no one's helping them. That's what they all claim. Having a rough life doesn't mean you go out and kill innocent civilians. That's not acceptable. Kids who grow up in public housing have a rough life also. A lot of kids bullied at school, including myself, no reason to hurt others. Like we talked about, when my pledge to this broadcast is to stop bullying, speak up. Every day, at the end of the broadcast, you always heard me say, stop bullying, speak up. Which is also the title of the Facebook group, Stop Bullying, Speak Up. And clearly, this would not make the mark. This will be posted on social media because really the only reason I'm posting stories like this on the groups because you know we gotta make sure that this is not ever happening in your community or in your schools. Nobody should be bullied. Period. And if you've been bullied, you know what that's like. Everybody gets victimized all the time. I mean, you could just sit on a bench, look at someone and say, "Hey, fatty, you are fat." Kids get judged a lot. Believe me, I'm special needs. I should know. It's like, "Hey, fatty, you fat, fatty, fat." Everybody gets victimized. The point is, if you have a problem, here's the thing, kids. If you have a problem with, if you're being bullied, you talk to somebody. Talk to mom and dad. Talk to an assistant principal. Talk to your school counselor. They can help you out. You don't have to do things your own way and say, oh, I'm going to go get a gun and I'm going to shoot innocent civilians because they're not going to help me out. No, you talk to them and say, hi, sorry to interrupt, but I have a problem with bullying. I'm being bullied. Think back to the story of when these two girls reported them being bullied. The principal decided to suspend the victims. But the bullies say they instigated it. And the spotlight was right back on the victims. Children killing has always happened, not just in Wisconsin, Texas, Arkansas, Kentucky, every other state you live in. But each time you may have wondered, what's your society do with just troubled kids? Do you put them in prison? Or do you just put them in juvenile correction centers and probably do something else? When we return, we're going to take a second look into a juvenile correction center called High Plains Youth Center. And later on, our Give Me a Break special event, Raising a Titanic. It's something you don't want to miss, so please stay with us. Arkansas, Kentucky, Colorado, Virginia, Florida, Connecticut, Columbine, Sandy Hook, Robb Elementary, Michigan, Uvalde, and now the mass Wisconsin shooting. Children killing children. It's often the teens. In all these years, these kids are killing kids, and kids are threatening our schools. Each time, you may have wondered, what should society do with such troubled kids or teens? Do you put them in prison, or do you put them in juvenile correction centers, or do something else? As we first showed this story, we focused in on the solution to dealing with such troubled kids by either putting them in prisons or putting them in the juvenile correction centers. Tonight, we're going to take a second look into this story because of all this happening. Because of the latest going on from Madison, Wisconsin, we're going to take a second look into a private corporation that would even not help out kids, but with very serious problems. Not just with kids, but with one program. It's related to this because not only you can see the teens, but really, it's just real problems to deal with. Here's Chris Hansen.
Dr. Ronald Davidson is on a mission. The University of Illinois psychiatrist has become a fierce advocate for that state's most troubled kids.
You have a problem with the outlet here?
Hired by the state of Illinois, Davidson has spent the last few years inspecting more than 100 privately run treatment and detention centers housing Illinois kids.
It's not a good idea to keep it here.
He built a tough reputation inside the state, but it's his stinging attacks across state lines that are stirring up some of the most controversy. For some time now, Illinois, like other states, has found itself overwhelmed by the numbers of troubled children. And instead of building more treatment centers, it decided to turn to private corporations in other states. In just 1 year, Illinois spent $60 million exporting 800 kids to places like Florida, Arizona, and Colorado. But when Davidson was asked to evaluate shipping kids to those private facilities, he reached an early conclusion.
Well, I've also called it a interstate trafficking in children for profit.
What's wrong with taking a troubled kid and sending him or her to Colorado or Arizona or Texas if, in fact, there's a facility there for treatment?
Good question. We're talking about salvaging the lives of children. And you cannot do that by putting a child on an airplane as if he were some toxic waste in a sealed container and dropping him in Texas or some other state.
Welcome to Brush, Colorado, home to the High Plains Youth Center. Although it's called a youth center, High Plains is really a for-profit juvenile prison, holding kids with criminal records. Its mission, according to its own brochure, to change the behaviors and values of delinquent kids. An attractive alternative for some states. But at $175 a day per kid, the treatment doesn't come cheap. High Plains was earning several $millions a year by taking in Illinois kids. That is, until Ron Davidson came to town. We all respect young men and treat others the way we want to be treated. High Plains is owned by the Rebound Corporation. It's home to young murderers, rapists, robbers, and drug dealers from 20 states. By 1995, there were 41 Illinois kids at High Plains.
This was a very troubled facility that in many ways had slipped out of control and was not providing adequate care in any stretch of the imagination.
Davidson's investigation in late 1995 detailed evidence of drug use, homemade weapons, and gang activity inside High Plains. He concluded that there was a consistent and disturbing pattern of violence, sexual abuse, clinical malpractice, and administrative incompetence.
Virtually every state that had kids in the program came out and did their own independent audits, and those audits were widely different from the audit from Illinois.
Bill Botkin was director of planning for Rebound when Davidson did his audit. We interviewed him last year for this story. He has since left the company. Rebound called Davidson's investigation inaccurate, biased, and malicious, and notes that High Plains passed a Colorado audit prior to Davidson's inspection.
And I guess the ultimate determination is, has this kid changed? Is he successful? Is he better off now than when he was when he started the program? And the answer has been yes.
Botkin cites studies showing that 70% of High Plains kids had not reoffended within 1 year after leaving the program.
I enjoy working with kids.
Staff members gave Dateline a guided tour of High Plains.
Is this tough work?
Yes, it is. It's tough work, but it's also a very rewarding work. We see the fruits of our labor.
We were also provided a group of High Plains inmates who talked about their treatment. One had been convicted of rape, another murder.
Do you feel now for your victim?
Yeah, I do. You know, I know what I did was wrong, you know, and I'm not gonna do it again.
My treatment now is successful. You know what I'm saying? With a lot of my problems, like when I first came here, had a quick temper, you know, towards my easy anger. And I can say this program has really helped me out a lot.
What did you find when you took the job? I found chaos.
We spoke with a group of former Rebound employees. Most of them had quit the company. 2 were dismissed for cause. They all told us about serious problems at Rebound facilities.
They don't count on people taking a stand.
I really liked my job. I thought I did a good job. But with the blatant denial and the, you know, covering things under the carpet, I realized that I couldn't be loyal to them as an employee anymore.
One striking example, a High Plains inmate named Thomas. For about a year beginning in 1994, according to staff logbooks, Thomas was repeatedly beaten and raped by his roommates and threatened with being set on fire. Lisa Hansen was a High Plains counselor at the time.
Was it your feeling that they knew what was happening to Thomas and they were allowing it to happen?
Yes. I felt that they were allowing it to happen and they didn't want to investigate it. They didn't want to know. They didn't want to know what was happening in those rooms at night. They were afraid to know.
High Plains officials say while no inmates are supposed to be having sex, in Thomas's case, it was consensual. The situation was corrected.
My problem was the alcohol, then came the gangs. And you mix them two together and that spells violence.
Steve Ashcraft was one of those Illinois kids sent to High Plains. He landed there after racking up a series of juvenile arrests for violent crimes.
I could have just stayed here.
Ashcraft admits he's partially at fault for not turning himself around at High Plains. He says there were some devoted staff members and teachers who furthered his education. But Davidson, Illinois' watchdog, found many of the staff unprepared to handle young criminals and their problems. For Ashcraft, it was alcohol.
I knew I had an alcohol problem. There's nothing that they had that could help me work on it.
In the time since Ashcraft left High Plains, Colorado audits of the facility show improvement. Even Illinois officials approved a corrective action plan by the facility. But former Rebound employee Lori Sturer, let go by the company, says audits can be deceiving. She claims she was told to lie to inspectors and falsify records at another Rebound facility. That's a serious charge.
I've done it.
You were told to falsify records?
Yes, we know when they're coming, and so for weeks up until that audit, we're faking things. We look really good on paper.
Some former Rebound employees have told us that they were told by higher-ups to falsify records and documents before inspections.
We have never heard that allegation. That's certainly a very serious allegation. For us, that would be grounds for dismissal.
Have you drawn all these since you've been here at High Plains?
Yeah.
The company insists that as soon as problems are pointed out, changes are made. Colorado audits do show that in recent years there has been a reduction in violence in High Plains, as well as improved treatment programs and better staff training.
We don't deny that there were issues here that we were working pretty aggressively on when Illinois came in and did the report.
But why has it taken outside investigators to come here and point out these very, very drastic problems?
We learned that lesson very painfully, and as a result of that lesson, we have set up that internal quality assurance.
But now, High Plains is under attack again. Colorado and other states are pulling their kids out of the facility. The action is the result of a scathing report triggered by the recent suicide of a 13-year-old High Plains inmate.
This child should have been on suicide watch, and that, in fact, this child should not have died.
Colorado officials say between 1993 and 1998, there have been a dozen substantiated cases of child abuse at High Plains. Information kept secret by local authorities. Information that ultimately became public after Dateline started asking questions of state officials. Colorado investigators say in the last year, High Plains staff had physically assaulted kids and had sex with them inside the facility, in addition to providing them with cigarettes, alcohol, and pornography. Rebound says staff involved in these incidents have either quit or been fired, but the company acknowledges it is the target of a new criminal investigation. Dateline asked Rebound for another on-camera interview regarding this latest round of allegations. The company declined. A spokesperson did tell us, though, that the Colorado audit was flawed, overstated, and that in some cases the child abuse allegations are not clear-cut. As for Steve Ashcraft, he found trouble again soon after coming home from High Plains. Our interview with him took place just 2 weeks after he got out of this Illinois adult prison where he was serving time for armed robbery.
The state of Illinois paid somewhere around $115,000 for you to spend 22 months at High Plains. What did the state get for its money?
Nothing. Dead weight. The taxpayers just lost a lot of money.
Yeah. There is, of course, no guarantee that Steve Ashcraft would have turned out any better if he'd been confined closer to home. But Illinois officials agree with him that the investment they made to send Steve and other juveniles out of state was misguided. From now on, those officials plan to do whatever it takes to keep the state's troubled kids in Illinois.
Very difficult.
And for Ron Davidson, who's been crusading for better treatment and facilities for the youngsters in trouble, it comes down to keeping a closer eye on the kids and on the money spent to treat them.
The bottom line for us is that we are going to do whatever we have to do to make sure that Illinois' kids are not treated like crash test dummies for corporations that don't know how to get their act together.
Late yesterday, Colorado officials announced they were shutting down the High Plains Youth Center and revoking its license to operate. A spokesman for the Rebound Corporation says the company will comply with the order, but claims officials violated state law by not holding a hearing before the shutdown. As for Illinois, since Dr. Davidson's initial report on High Plains in 1995, the state has reduced the number of children it places at out-of-state facilities from 800 to less than 200.
So this is what I should have said at the end of this clip. Colorado needs its facilities, for number one. Second, we don't need to be shipping kids from Illinois to other states when Illinois has its own, should be having their own juvenile correction center. It should never have happened, and it probably won't ever happen if you probably stick to what's going on. So this is the bottom line here. Don't ship kids to places where they have juvenile correction centers, then just call it a day. Not how this works. Illinois has, every state should have its own juvenile correction center. You don't take them from different states like they're a toxic waste dump. Put them in your county. Put them in your county facility, and they'll probably take care of it. That's helping them out. Believe me, I should know. I never was once in a juvie, but that's a whole different story. Speaking of another story, next, the main event you've all been waiting for. Would you ever imagine going deeper into the Titanic and watching them lift the little piece of the Titanic that took years to get? Well, now Discovery Channel is going to be showing you, along with Dateline, as we raise the question of the Titanic. Sarah James and Bob McEwen are going inside the Titanic when we come back. Stay with us. It has been over 100 years since we have all tried to ask ourselves the question, what really happened on that Titanic? Earlier this season, we showed you a preview of what we were going to be talking about. We showed you what scientists were doing to raise that little piece of hull of the Titanic, but nobody could. It took them years, but finally it may have happened. It could happen. We just probably will never know. Tonight, Discovery Channel and Dateline are going to take you on an extraordinary ride to solve the mystery of what happened on the Titanic over 100 years ago. So, if you're ready, if you got your popcorn ready, find a good seat, because tonight we're going on an adventure. Sarah James leads us off.
You need a global positioning system to find this pinprick in such an immense swath of ocean. Its coordinates, 41 degrees north latitude, 49 degrees west longitude. It's about 1,900 miles from where Titanic left Southampton Inc. dock in New York City. Come with us now as we take you 13,000 feet beneath the sea to view the Titanic as it's never been seen.
When you come upon it, it's like seeing your world in total chaos 100 years ago, having stopped in an icy moment of time.
George Tulloch is the co-leader of this expedition. His company, RMS Titanic, owns the right to bring up artifacts from this sacred place where more than 1,500 people lost their lives on a frosty April night in 1912.
You feel how small you are. You feel how delicate your thread is connecting you to life. And you feel this sense of humility in that you didn't suffer at all this tremendous tragedy.
The French team that helped discover the wreck brought Tulloch on board in 1987 to ensure that items recovered from the wreck were preserved properly and made available to the public. This French version of a yellow submarine, Nautil, is the workhorse of the expedition and one of the few vessels in the world. For the crew inside, it will be like commuting to work because the sub will have to make that trip every single day of the mission. But this is far from a ride on the freeway.
I would say it's Earth's hardest frontier. It's harder to get there than to go to the moon, but it's worth it.
The dangerous journey is the only way to discover these treasures, each with its own story to tell.
Over the bow.
You'd think Tulloch would be looking for gold and jewels. Indeed, there are tales of a valuable pearl necklace and a multi-million-dollar shipment of diamonds that might have gone down with the ship.
So you don't want to find all this beautiful jewelry that's at the bottom of the ocean?
You know, you've got to be as careful with a dish or a coffee mug or a love letter as you do with a diamond.
And a love letter tells us so much more.
A love letter is people. is actually the lives and souls and stories of people.
On this trip, some of the real treasures have been haunting images, pictures of the wreck as we've never seen it before. These pictures reveal the Titanic and the relic's exposure to the harsh waters of the North Atlantic. In previous missions, the team has snared a silver bowl that might have been found in the first-class dining room, collected crystal and china, amazingly, much of it without so much as a chip, and some of it still emblazoned with the Titanic White Star logo, as well as even more personal items, the detritus of a journey interrupted. One of the most precious items recovered, this suitcase. After the last mission in 1996, the suitcase was among the items airlifted to this high-tech lab in France.
Is this a kind of conservation triage?
Absolutely, it is triage. It is conservation triage because it's emergency work done on critically ill objects.
Inside that suitcase, scientists discovered a suit of clothes. To restore this bit of history, conservationists first had to perform a simple yet profound task: unfold the garments for someone who never got the chance.
86 years after it was packed, this suit of clothes finally arrived at its original destination, the United States. Historians say the cut and quality of the fabric indicate this suit belonged to a third-class passenger, perhaps one of the many people who boarded Titanic with dreams of starting a new life in America. And what about these flamboyant purple socks? They suggest a younger person, but the exact identity of this passenger remains one of Titanic's many mysteries.
That suit is just one of thousands of objects recovered from the ocean floor, now on display at Titanic exhibitions around the world, like this one in Boston. Tulloch has pledged not to sell any of the artifacts, but his company does make money selling Titanic memorabilia and from ticket sales to these exhibits. But for some, they see the salvage of the Titanic as a violation of an underwater tomb for the men, women, and children who perished on that cold, starry night.
What is the difference in your mind, George? I mean, if a suitcase like that had been recovered, say, from TWA Flight Ace, it's on its way to a museum. Is this grave robbing?
No, Titanic is almost 100 years ago. 100 years later, who do you give it to? Which cousin? Which grandniece?
Tulloch says if his company had not been granted sole salvage rights and put these objects on public display, the Titanic might have wound up like so many other famous shipwrecks, picked clean by treasure hunters.
The success of this mission depends on the one element no one can control: weather. In fact, a big storm ended the 1996 expedition early, and Tulloch knows it could happen again.
What's your biggest fear for this expedition?
Hurricanes coming out of the Caribbean, up the Gulf Stream, and it's just like troops marching.
And finally tonight, we will show you something else that is truly incredible: a 20-ton section of the liner's portside hull, the largest relic ever recovered from this deep ocean, marking a milestone in the history of Titanic. That little piece of hull that you see right here, that is what they're going to lift. So if you want to see that happen, you better stick around, because when we come back, we're going to have more of this expedition to the Titanic. And later on, that little piece of hull will be lifted. Bob McEwen and Sarah James will come right back to tell you more about the historic Titanic as we continue this Give Me a Break special, Raising the Titanic. Please stay with us. Welcome back to this Give Me a Break special, Raising the Titanic. Tonight we're going to take you inside the Titanic from back in 1998, where they were trying to lift that that piece of hull, a Herculean effort. This is something we've not seen before on this broadcast, but you'll get to see it firsthand. We'll get to that later. But now you're going to meet some scientists who are trying to continue to solve this mystery of the Titanic by not gold, but other artifacts that may not be able to sell. From a scientist to even an explorer, you're about to meet some characters that are willing to solve this mystery as well. It may not be like Two Sides of Smallville, to where they would find Kryptonian symbols.
I don't know why I'm not comparing Smallville to Titanic, but here's Bob McEwen.
They know exactly where Titanic is. The trip to it is only 2.5 miles long, but fewer people have gone there than have flown in space.
On the front, you have all the main equipment. You have all the lights.
No one knows Natil better than P.H. Nargeolet.
You have some video camera, still camera. There is a viewport, of course. You have 2 manipulators.
In this French mini-sub, he spent more time on Titanic than anyone ever has, including the ocean liner's captain.
For me, the Titanic is a magic wreck. You know, it's probably in my dream, you know, it's the best wreck in the world.
But there'd be no dreams here without Natil. Most of what you see on the outside, this yellow shell, is just flotation and ballast. The critical part is what's on the inside. A tiny cockpit, just 7 feet in diameter, designed to support human life in the most inhospitable place on Earth. It's been called an inner space capsule. In here, the self-contained breathing system is the same one astronauts use. The hull is solid titanium, 4 inches thick. And though the pressure outside is the equivalent of hundreds of millions of pounds, because this is a sphere, that tremendous weight is distributed evenly over every square inch of Natil. But just one tiny crack in this hull, and the capsule would implode in a fraction of a second, crushing everyone inside, literally to dust.
If we have a leak at this depth, it's like, you know, a bullet, or if you have an explosion, it's the same thing, you know, same thing.
Despite the undeniable danger, P.H. Nargeolet has made almost 100 dives in Natil. It was while creeping along the ocean floor 11 years ago that Nargeolet, who saw the world as a French Navy frogman, saw something through Natil's porthole that he says changed his life.
The first time I done the Titanic was in '87, and I remember very well. And suddenly we saw the hull of the Titanic herself, and we climb, and that's the emotion is coming, you know. We are thinking to the people, we are thinking to the ship, to the tragedy, to everything. And for me, it was a very strong moment, very, very strong.
For years, the search for Titanic, and now the exploration of the wreck site, have been a proving ground for cutting-edge deep-sea technology. But since this expedition began, it's been beset with problems. The inherent danger of working in the middle of the North Atlantic is just the beginning. The story of this unmanned submersible, called Magellan, shows that way out here, whatever can go wrong usually does.
Magellan's mission today is to dive 2.5 miles down to the bottom of the ocean and travel 86 years back in time to the bow section of the Titanic, to the very spot where the great ship sank on that April night back in 1912.
Fire hydraulics. Hydraulics are on. And you're good and wet.
Magellan's going to come down like an elevator to a point about 100 meters to the east of the bow rack and drive to the forepeak, come up to the railings, run along the railings to look for any additional iceberg damage that may not have been seen before.
Magellan's 3-mile-long lifeline to the surface becomes tangled, and as if that weren't enough, the ship it's attached to, the Ocean Voyager, loses all power.
Give him slack and take him down.
Finally, Magellan is hauled back up to the surface. The completion of its assignment delayed again.
Okay, 100% down.
Another of the objectives of this expedition is to explore inside Titanic, to go to places that have never been seen since the night the ship went down. And as good as she is, at a weight of more than 3 tons and a cost of over $1 million, Magellan is simply too big and too valuable to risk on that kind of dangerous mission.
We still should have a lot of buoyancy compared to before.
Enter Bill Willard and his ROV called T-Rex. That stands for Titanic Remote Explorer.
Okay, I want to go forward.
His kid named it. When he wasn't teaching high school science, Bill built it in his living room. T-Rex got its first test in the Seneca, South Carolina municipal swimming pool. Hey, it was the deep end.
I guess you could say I'm fulfilling one of my favorite dreams. A long time ago, I began a
trail studying Titanic. It became more of a hobby, it became a passion.
Bill is a Titanic buff from way back. When he saw the pictures from Nautiel in 1996, he wondered why they never went inside the wreck. Then he met mission leader P.H. Narjala at a Titanic exhibition.
We talked a little while, and I said to PH, why don't you have a small disposable ROV that would go inside where you could get some great, fabulous footage? He said, one does not exist. Do you have one? And I said, well, if we make one, will you use it?
But unlike other Titanic enthusiasts, it's not first-class cabins that Willard wants to see.
I would love to go into third-class areas where they carried their lives with them.
On a ship with so many fabulously wealthy, influential people, you'd go to third class.
If you look at the steerage section, that's where the real people were, the working class people, the people that packed up and gave their lives and to come to America to start all over again.
But because of continuing technical difficulties, T-Rex has yet to make that intrepid trip inside the Titanic.
Here's our camera system.
So for now, Bill Willard's creation sits on the deck of the Ocean Voyager, waiting for technology to catch up to his dreams.
Considering exactly where we are, you might well be wondering, how are we getting these pictures to you from the bottom of the middle of the ocean? Well, if Bill Willard ever does get T-Rex up and running, it'll be one end of a problem that's never been tried before.
Pictures from T-Rex, perhaps even inside Titanic, would be fed back to Magellan outside the wreck. From there, the TV signal travels along 3 miles of cable up to the surface and onto our production ship, Ocean Voyager. Then the signal gets sent to this thing, which looks like a big white beach ball perched on top of the ship. Inside is a dish that bounces the signal to a satellite that sends it to New York City, which broadcasts it right into your own living room. Meanwhile, Magellan is back in the water. Its problem solved, at least for now, sending back more of those wonderful pictures.
When we come back, what the Titanic wreckage reveals about the people who gave that mighty ship life.
Wow. But what about all the people during that time? When we return, you're going to see, when we return, the history of the Titanic continues with all the people that were in that ship or probably made it out of the ship. Stay with us. So now we're looking at the preview of that hull. We looked at what they're going to use. We met a teacher. We met a kid who made the camera. Let's now talk about the people that were on the Titanic. What's it going to say about us? What will it say about us? How can we open up the door to the mystery of that Titanic? How will it help us remember where we were that day? Here's Lynn Cannon.
On the ocean bottom, the wreckage lies silent. But if these objects could speak, what tales would they tell? Did lovers see their lasts? What goodbyes were said as a lifeboat was lowered from this crane?
It is so immense, so beautiful, so devastating. You are seeing things that you only read about, and to actually see where all of these events took place is a profoundly moving experience.
For historian, Titanic wreck site is a journey through time. A trip back 86 years to a tragedy when many thought anything was possible.
When you see the ship, you say almost automatically, oh my God.
Haas looks past the twisted metal of the wreckage, through the portholes, to the people on Titanic, those who survived and those who did not. For the passengers, this is where it all began.
These are the B-deck doorways. When you boarded the ship at Southampton in England, you would essentially have gone through these doors, and the purser would greet you there.
The Titanic set sail for New York and into history on April 10, 1912. 2,200 passengers were on board, including a handful of some of the world's richest people, like John Jacob Astor. Astor and his young wife, Madeline, married just 6 months before the voyage in this ballroom at the Astor's elegant summer home in Newport, Rhode Island.
You have an amazing collection of people on the Titanic, everything from the humblest immigrant to the wealthiest millionaire. And somewhere within that range, we tend to find human beings that are a lot like ourselves.
Last week, this kitchen pot was found in the debris field, a simple reminder of life on board an extraordinary ship. In fact, a meal on the Titanic meant the finest in dining at sea. Titanic was the ultimate luxury liner. The accommodations were magnificent. To many, the symbol of that elegance was the breathtaking grand staircase. 86 years later, this chandelier is a reminder of that elegance, now being devoured by the sea, which claimed Titanic on April 14th, 1912. That day continued full speed ahead. Looming ahead in the darkness of the moonless night was the iceberg. And as seen here in last year's Oscar-winning movie Titanic, with Lookout Frederick Fleet's warning, "Iceberg, right ahead!" the drama was underway.
We are hovering over the fallen forward mast, and you see the remains of the crow's nest. It was here that Lookout Frederick Fleet spotted an iceberg at 11:40 p.m.
If they had spotted the iceberg 15 seconds sooner, they probably would have cleared it completely.
In 1996, Paul Mathias's mission was to determine the exact nature of the iceberg damage. What he found was not a 300-foot gash, but a series of razor-thin cracks. Later, metal testing revealed dangerously brittle iron in rivets recovered during the dive. The rivets' heads were sheared off by the iceberg, and they popped out, opening up slim cracks between hull plates.
That's a finger with a small hole.
Discovery's scientific team calculated that the greatest ship in the world merely glanced off the iceberg and was doomed by the equivalent of pinpricks. With pristine holes, but no rivets, this metal plate found just last week supports the conclusion that the rivets popped out.
Bring your head, 90 right.
Later in this mission, researchers hope to use remote-controlled cameras to maneuver deep inside the hull, taking pictures of the iceberg damage for the first time. Will the mystery finally be solved beyond a doubt? According to Haas, the collision with the iceberg was so gentle, many passengers had no idea the ship was in danger and decided not to board the lifeboats.
The great tragedy is that fully 500 seats in those lifeboats were sent away empty. 500 people lost their lives for no reason other than a lack of information about what was going on.
The orders were to save women and children first, but many women refused seats in the lifeboats. Ida Strauss, wife of the owner of Macy's department store, was one of those women. Whatever her fate, she would face it with her husband. The Strausses would die together. For those who did get in the lifeboats, this is one of the cranes that lowered them to safety.
You come up close to it and you can see that the brass mechanism, it gleams in the light of the sub.
During the ordeal, upbeat ragtime music from Titanic's band comforted passengers. The band would play until the very end, finishing one last hymn, "Nearer My God to Thee," before the ship went down. As Haas guided the sub's crew around the wreckage, other stories from so long ago came to light.
Among the greatest heroes of Titanic's story, I think, are the postal workers. As the water began flooding, the men's only thought was to try to rescue the mail that they had been placed in charge of.
With a sense of duty hard to imagine, the postal workers tried to drag the mail to higher ground, but were overtaken by rising waters. This great hole marks the spot where the 5 men died. They were Titanic's first victims. This boiler powered Titanic's massive engines. After the collision, stokers worked valiantly to provide power to the doomed ship. Stoker Frederick Barrett was lucky. He was later assigned to a lifeboat as an oarsman and survived. In the movie Titanic, the story of forbidden love between Jack and Rose, and soaring scenes like this on the ship's bow, came straight from director James Cameron's imagination. This is the view today on Titanic's bow. On these decks, there were many real-life stories of lost love on that tragic night.
We're looking now down at the third class area, the so-called forward well deck.
From this section, the third class deck, passengers like Gerda Lindell and her husband Edvard could enjoy the sunsets.
There are so many stories that touch your heart, and the Lindells are another example.
The Lindells were a young couple from Sweden looking for a better life in America. On the night of the tragedy, as the ship's stern rose out of the water, the Lindells were thrown overboard. Edvard would not survive. Someone tried to pull Gerda aboard a lifeboat, but she too was claimed by the sea.
The gold wedding ring that was on her hand dropped into the lifeboat as she fell back into the water.
And later recovered. The Titanic has been... Those distinctions remained even when the ship sank, as first-class passengers got priority treatment. But were third-class passengers actually locked behind gates? In the blockbuster Titanic movie, we see third-class passengers prevented that.
We have considerable evidence to suggest that the gates that separated third class from second and first were not lockable, that they simply were a latch that you would lift and the gate would open.
Right there. Yeah.
For Haas, solving the riddle of the third-class gates is one reason he's here now. He says exploring the wreckage and recovering artifacts must be done before the Titanic slowly disintegrates at the bottom of the ocean. From telegraphs and teacups to a clarinet and love letters, he thinks preserving the artifacts is the best way to give meaning to the lives that were lost.
To the next generation, it has to be the artifacts that speak. So long as younger generations become intrigued with Titanic's story, she and the people on her are not going to be forgotten.
But what about the grand prize of this mission, the chunk of hull that was lying separate from the main bulk of the Titanic's wreckage? When we come back, the painful history of trying to bring it up.
We looked at the people. All of it. We looked at the preview of what's going to be coming up next. So you better fasten your seatbelts and get ready for this one. Because when we come back, and I really do mean this, when we come back, you're really going to see what's going to happen when these scientists lift that piece of shit up from the Titanic. I shouldn't be respectful. Raise that piece of hull up from it which will be Herculean. They tried, they failed, but could they try again? And even put it back for history. Sarah James is back talking about this one, so do me a favor, stay with us if you would. This is going to be fun. Welcome back to our Give Me a Break special, Raising the Titanic, where we're a bit later on, we're going to show you how these scientists can really lift the Herculean piece of hull from the Titanic and really help solve the mystery of what happened to that ship. As we get ready for the little preview, the scientists are getting ready for a last chance. This is the second chance before it disintegrates. They tried it for the first time years ago, but will the second time ever succeed? Once again, here's Bob McEwen.
Mother Nature has a way sometimes of doing one of two things. Either she will kill you in a second, or she will put the pressure on you to perform, and you either perform or fail.
In many ways, in August 1996, it truly was Mother Nature against George Tulloch. The mission, to beat water and weight and to raise a piece of Titanic.
The hull itself, that when you put your finger and pointed at it, you said, that's Titanic. Not the whistles, not the compass, not the bell.
And George Tulloch knew that it would take some major bells and whistles to pull it off. Other parts of Titanic had been raised before, but never anything this big. The hull piece is 23 feet long. It weighs 20 tons, about the same as 14 full-size cars.
It's a huge chunk of Titanic's hull, including portholes, sheared off in the sinking and found at the bottom of the sea near Titanic's stern. The plan was this. First, use the mini-sub Nautil to attach lift bags to the piece. Filled with buoyant diesel fuel, those bags are supposed to act like balloons, rising all the way back up to the surface, carrying the piece with them. A line from the recovery ship will be attached, and the piece will be hauled aboard. And the plan worked, at least to a point. The lift bags and the big piece arrived at the surface.
Well done.
But the celebration would be short-lived. A storm started wrestling with Tulloch over the hull piece.
Not enough one night.
Ropes and nerves were strained to the breaking point.
This rope is crap. This rope is crap.
They couldn't keep the hull piece in their grasp, and finally it sank back to the bottom of the sea. For George Tulloch, whose personal mission is to help all of us better understand the storied vessel lost on that night to remember, this would be a night to forget.
Honestly, I felt like I lost a member of my family. So we had to just respect the sea and ask if we could come back another day, maybe.
2 miles down, attached to the hull piece, was a small metal sign. I will come back.
Is this piece of history doomed to lie forever on the ocean floor? The final chapter in our story when we come back.
Okay, let's review this. Look at that. 23 tons. That big piece right here. Can I ever imagine lifting that sucker? It's like trying to drag, like you're half drunk at Christmas, dragging a box around, dragging a box of bike parts. I got the joke planned out here. Hey, mijo, that's the bike you wanted. Why you crying? Those better be tears of joy going on. I had to pull the fucking bike all the way to the garage. He said nothing. Even scientists were like, swim down. And then trying to lift it while the swimming back up. Yeah. Yeah. Hey. Yo, that's the hole you wanted. Why you crying? Those better be tears of joy. I had a fucking bullet little fucker while I was trying to swim. He said nothing. We're gonna do it tomorrow. We're gonna do it. But right now, ya tampoco. I feel good. Where the training wheels? Got no training wheels. Oh, you fool! You're 4 years old and you tennis training wheels. When I was 2, I was only driving a fucking car. Over the grapevines. I'm not teaching you to learn like that. Okay, we're getting off subject here. I was trying to make a joke out of it. But, as we turn the page here, because really, that little piece of hole is what they're going to lift. So, if you need to refill your popcorn, refill your drink, go get some Milk Duds, go get some from Stripes, or from 7-Eleven, or go get your girlfriend here. You better go do so. Call up your friends. Go get your girlfriend up. Go get your mom. Go get your dad up. Tell them to come over here. And they yell and say, why the fuck is tripping at 3 o'clock? I'll tell you why. When we come back, the final chapter and the conclusion to our special is going to happen. So, get your shit together. So, get what you need. Take a break here. Go get yourself some Milk Duds. Go get yourself a refill. Go get yourself some popcorn. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. That piece of hole and the final chapter is coming up next when we come back. And it's a Give Me a Break first, so stay with us. Back after this. Are you guys ready for this? Did you get your soda? Did you get your refills? Did you refill your popcorn? If this was educational, it'd be in the history book. So it'd be a great way to end off the new year. So if you're ready, and for those who just joined us or land on another planet, tonight we're doing our Giving Break special called Raising the Titanic. The Titanic, sorry. Raising the Titanic, where we're looking back over 100 years ago when she sank because of an iceberg. You might have seen the movie called The Titanic, to where all the events would happen. But what you have not seen before is what we're going to show you tonight. So far what we've seen is a preview of Raising the Hull. We've also seen the stuff they're going to use to raise that hull. We've seen the people. We've seen all the artifacts that have been lifted from that ship that could tell us all what happened. And we've also seen what's going to happen. We also look back in 1996 to where the first time they lifted it. Now, a second chance. Will they raise that hull and help solve the mystery of what happened over 100 years ago when the Titanic sank after it hit the iceberg? Prepare yourself. It may not be no scary movie, but you'll jump out of explosion and eat some popcorn. Or hell, you can even watch it while you're drunk and no one would even notice, not even your girlfriend. So if you got your girlfriend, if you got your wife with you, you got your husband, you got your boyfriend with you, sit them down and you better watch. I mean, I can even watch this while eating some Wingstop. And I have capsaicin. I'm going to have capsaicin in my mouth. Cured with milk. Once again, here's Sarah James.
Sits on the ocean floor, much as it has for 86 years. Silent, mysterious. It has become the stuff that dreams are made of. Ever since the Titanic sank, inventors have been devising schemes to recover it, from suggesting giant magnets to filling the hull with ping-pong balls and floating the ship to the surface. Ideas so far-fetched, one person scoffed, raise the Titanic? Why not just lower the Atlantic?
And one day, are we done with the big piece preparation?
George Tulloch trusts technology. He's out in the North Atlantic, trying once again to raise that big piece of Titanic's hull. He has with him a team of French oceanographers, led by engineer Pierre Valdy. He's back again with his plan to use 5 giant lift bags to raise the hull piece. This time, the bags are stronger and have more lift. But we are in the middle of the Atlantic, and 1,000 things can go wrong. Faith in technology is one thing that caused the Titanic wreck to begin with. On the French Navy vessel Nadir, the bags are filled. The submarine Nautile, as with 2 years ago, moves the 5 bags over to the big piece and hooks them up. The work takes several days. Nautile also studies the big piece. Ocean bacteria have attacked the steel. This may be George Tulloch's last chance to bring the piece to the surface. The salvage ship Abbé steams into the North Atlantic from France, ready to hoist Tulloch's prize onto its deck once the lift bags have brought the big piece close to the surface. Nautile goes below to make sure the lift bags are ready to float up.
What up?
The bags are in place, and the big piece should start to come up. But will it?
I'm here on the Abbé, where they're getting ready to attempt to hoist the big piece. To do that, they'll use powerful winches and this massive A-frame. This is exactly the point where 2 years ago, everything went terribly wrong. But this time, with the different boats and calmer seas, they're hoping the second time will be the charm.
It says here it hasn't moved.
But back on the bridge of Nadir, the news from the bottom is not good. Computers show the big piece is not moving from its home on the Atlantic floor. For all their calculations, they didn't figure on this. The big piece is standing straight up because it's stuck in the mud, and the mud doesn't want to let go.
The situation of the piece is not like last time. The piece is
stuck in the mud vertically.
On paper, this works. On paper, it works. That's correct. In the middle of the North Atlantic?
You know, you have to be careful with the ocean, and you can't just guarantee things.
The plan now on Nadir to launch a 6th lift bag in the morning to add more pull against the mud. But 86 years later, the ocean is once again giving technology a tough time. The weather forecast calls for heavy seas. But the ocean may have relinquished one of her secrets this day. The expedition now believes it was wrong about the big piece and where it's placed on Titanic. At first they thought it was an empty first-class suite on the starboard side. But after taking a closer look this time, they now think the piece is from the opposite side of the ship, Suite C86, the rooms of Mr. and Mrs. Walter Douglas, Quaker Oats fortune. He and his wife Mihaela had gone to Europe to celebrate his retirement at age 50.
They'd only been married for 3 years, and they were very much in love.
Dateline found their grandniece in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. She says Titanic has become part of her family's history.
The reason why it made such an impact on us was because of the grief on one hand and how it affected everyone, and also because it's a love story.
As Titanic was sinking, Walter insisted his wife go off on Lifeboat 2 without him.
She said, you know, why do you have to stay behind? And to me, this is the way he would want to be remembered, is he said, the only honorable thing to do is to stay behind with the man.
Mihaela hoped he survived, but then his body was recovered from the Atlantic. Mihaela lived until 1945 and is buried with her husband Walter now in Iowa. For the team, it makes bringing up the big piece more poignant, more real. But will the ocean care? The next day, it seems there's an answer. No heavy seas, no rough weather. It's a good day for the work ahead. I go into Natil myself and watch the sub attach the 6th lift bag to the recovery line. That's it. I give a peek at the big piece, perhaps the last look underwater, and seeing those ghostly portholes, I can't help but wonder what their thoughts were that last night. On the Nadir Bridge, everyone waits to see if Bag 6 has done the trick. Suddenly, computers show that the lift bags are beginning to rise. 20 minutes later, the bags pop up out of the ocean, but no one knows for sure what that means. Is the piece attached, or have the bags simply snapped loose? On the Abay, George Tullett waits anxiously. The tautness of Abay's thick cable is a sign the 20-ton piece is on the other end, like a fish at the end of a line. This would be the largest piece of the most famous wreck in history ever to reach the surface. But will it? Then, suddenly, it stops the hoist rope. Now divers go below to make sure the piece is attached and check on its condition. Divers make a dangerous plunge through lift bags and lift lines and come upon the big piece still in one piece.
Forget him, let's go!
On the surface, the hoisting begins again. And slowly, seemingly weighed down by its tragedy, the piece breaks through the surface and into the sunlight for the first time in 86 years.
Just make sure that they're not going crazy.
But the work is far from over. Men on launches move in to strap the big piece so it doesn't swing wildly on the deck and the brittle steel would shatter.
Tell them to watch that glass. How do you say glass in French?
The launches back off for now. The hoisting starts for a third time. The tension is nearly too much for Tullett.
I can't take this, you know.
It's completely out of the water now and swinging toward the deck.
Come on, where's the ropes? Where's the ropes? Why isn't this rope tight? Now, okay.
But the long bottom end of the piece is giving Abay's crew problems. And as the piece is finally laid onto the deck, the long end bends up dramatically, as if it's the ocean's last comment before giving up one of its rarest prizes. For the team, it is a stunning victory over the North Atlantic. Dreams come true. the last word belongs to someone not alive to see this. Someone who last saw this steel in all its glory on the finest ship. Wrote a poem about her night on Titanic, a porthole to the past through the shattered glass of room C86.
Darkness comes to her suddenly.
The huge black bulk stands out in silhouette against the starlit sky. Slowly, slowly, with hardly a ripple of that velvet sea, she sinks out of sight. Slowly it lost its force, then to a tiny wisp of sound, then to a pitiful whisper. Silence.
After the expedition, the piece of the hull will head to Boston, where it will be closely examined. There are still a lot of unanswered questions about the Titanic, its short life, and its horrible demise. The expedition has found a substantial part of the wreckage and even brought up some of it, as we have seen. But now science must pick up where exploration leaves off. What can the wreckage tell us? Is the Titanic decaying too quickly for us to learn anything lasting from it? Will we ever know for sure why the ship sank? Could it ever happen again? Join Discovery Channel on Sunday night for a 2-hour special, Titanic Live, the latest from the expedition to the ocean floor. And if you'd like to find out even more about this exciting mission, the whole recovery effort and artifact restoration, you can log on to our Dateline website at www.dateline.msnbc.com.
Which we're going to be doing next year. Next year, Titanic Live, after the New Year's. So prepare yourself for Titanic Live next year. I'll be back in just a moment. Does pineapple go on pizza? Have you ever had pineapple on a pizza? I once had, and the Italians would tell you that pineapple does not belong on a pizza. Well, on tonight's Bible break, there are some videos that really show you that pineapple does not belong on a pizza.
Ciao Nick, good pizza. Why do you have the money for it? Stop me, stop me, stop me, stop me, stop me. Can you guys shut up? What? Ciao Nick, good pizza. Pineapple does go on pizza! That was weird, I'm not gonna lie. Pineapple does go on!
Pineapple does not belong on a pizza because it's a fruit.
Oh, they're making pizza! Bacon! No! Yes! Look at that! You all don't know to cook! What did you say? Oh, they're making pizza!
How about when you're breaking the pasta? Because in Italy, if you break the pasta, it's a crime. Stop breaking the pasta!
What's the problem?
There's a python in here.
Okay, well, see you fellas later.
Isn't that sort of your job?
My brother.
How about when you break pasta in front of an Italian?
In front of an Italian grandfather.
In Italia ti arrestano, ti danno l'ergastolo. No, io mi devo sfogare. Allora faccio così. Non li mangia nessuno, non li mangia nessuno. Chiedi perdono a me. Ho pensato agli spaghetti.
Excuse me. And why is breaking pasta illegal? Let's take a look at this.
Why is breaking pasta illegal? Ask anybody in Italy, they will all tell you if you break your pasta, you will get in trouble with la Madonna. But why? Perché? Reason number one, the cooking won't be even. If you break your pasta, some pieces will be bigger than others, and will be cooked later than the rest, unless you break them exactly in the middle. Reason number two, you cannot roll short pasta. Rolling your spaghetti around your fork is part of the eating experience. Every time you don't do it, you're breaking a chef's heart somewhere in Italy. Reason number three, long pasta means more sauce in your mouth. When you twirl your pasta, you can catch more sauce at every bite, and that's the way the chef says you should have it. Breaking pasta. Kind of like opening a bag of chips at the movie theater. Just because people do it, doesn't mean you should do it too. It's the worst. Why is breaking...
Now going back to our... Remember a few months ago we showed you a story about ankle monitors? That's part of house arrest. And the question's always, what do I do when I'm on house arrest? If you're on house arrest, you have an ankle bracelet, meaning it's going to tell you to stay at the house. But that could be changed. So there's a video I found where it can have where how house arrest can really work. 15 million people saw this video. Take a look at this.
On house arrest, here's exactly what happens. First, you'll be given an ankle bracelet. 3 times winners should have read the fine print. A radio station in California promised. If you're put on house arrest, here's exactly what happens. First, you'll be given... If you're put on house arrest, here's exactly what happens. First, you'll be given an ankle bracelet and confined to a specific area, usually your home.
Heck yeah! Now I get to play video games all day.
Sure, but what you probably don't know is if you're in a state like California, criminals have to pay $12 to $15 a day in maintenance fees.
$15 a day? Not if I can help it.
Ooh, be careful. If you break your ankle bracelet, you'll have to pay for a replacement.
But it's so itchy!
I know. I'll let the battery die out and then I'll take it off. If you let the battery die, an arrest warrant could be issued, and then the cops will come and find you. The same is true if you leave your house.
So you're saying I can't do this?
I'm in. I'm in. What the? Criminal 243 just left his house arrest zone. Let's go! Don't do that.
Oh, come on, Mike. Why?
Because if you step outside the specific zone around your house without permission, you could be sent to jail and face new charges.
Mike, you worry too much. Ah!
If you're put on house arrest, here's a...
That's exactly what can happen if you're placed on house arrest. So, the next time you're placed on house arrest, try to remember that you can't leave the premises unless you have permission. Like, if it's for work purposes, you gotta let them know that you're at work. You can't be telling your work, hey, I'm under house arrest. If that ever happens to you, just let your boss know that, hey, I can't leave the premises because I'm under house arrest. And I don't know if you can talk to an attorney or whatever, but they'll probably help you out here. So, yeah. It may work. With this in mind, that's all for the special edition of Give Me a Break Saturday. We're gonna be off. We're gonna be off this week. We're gonna be off all next week because of Sorry, that's all for this special edition of Give Me a Break going into Sunday. We're gonna be off this week because of Christmas and New Year's. So we'll see you again in a couple weeks. We'll see you again on January 6th for Give Me a Break Monday as we take a vacation. For all of us here at YouTube, man, give me a break. Stop bullying. Speak up. Concentration, not strength. No jaywalking. Your body, your choice. Have a great night, and have a great Merry Christmas, a great New Year, and a great Happy Holiday. Good night, everybody. I will see you all on January 6th. Monday, January 6th. Or me, I should say. I'll see you in 2025. Good night.